It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222, your emails at randywangradio@gmail.com, and search for the KABC News Blitz wherever you get your podcasts. Let me just tell you up front, I can't wait for tomorrow's show. Tomorrow will be our first Friday of the year, and I am going to tell you every detail that I can fit into 1 hour of programming of my incredible European vacation. I can't stop thinking about it. I have so many things to tell you, but that's tomorrow. Today, we got important things to get through, including all of the aftermath as we're dealing with the 1-year anniversary of the Palisades and Eaton fires. And there's so much that has come out in the last few days. We covered Spencer Pratt announcing his mayoral run, but that wasn't the only news that broke yesterday. We're starting to see the LAFD admit mistakes. We're starting to see what the depositions look like for state parks employees. Let's start with the LAFD because the new chief, Jaime Moore, well, this is very refreshing for him to be criticizing his own department for, I don't know, cleaning up the after-action report and all the other failures that led to the failed mop-up of the Lochman fire. So let's start there. Here's a report from NBC4.
We begin at 3 with a major milestone in the efforts to rebuild Pacific Palisades. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Annabelle Sedano. That milestone comes as tomorrow marks 1 year since the Palisades fire decimated the community. According to LA Mayor Karen Bass's office, more than 400 projects are confirmed to have started construction in Pacific Palisades.
And by the way, she's going on all the news shows talking about how that's such a huge success because it's faster than Lahaina. And NBC News, to their credit, they challenged her on that and said, you're in one of the biggest cities in the world. You're in the 5th largest economy in the world. Is it really fair to compare yourself to a small little village on a small little island?
And 2 certificates of occupancy for single-family homes have been issued.
In 1 year, 2 families are ready to move back in. That's pathetic.
The mayor's office says more than 1,400 permits have been issued and more than...
But she hasn't waived the fees for those permits, even though she promised she would.
And more than 17...
Because the city says, we can't afford it, which I do not understand. You weren't going to get those fees if the neighborhood didn't burn down because they would not need them. So what is the money that you're losing on saying, here's your permit? It's embarrassing.
And more than 7...
And outside of Crazy Park, nobody is raising a stink about this.
And more than 1,700 rebuilding plans have been approved. It's a major step toward rebuilding. We have live team coverage today as we reflect on the past year of recovery for both the Palisades and Eaton fires. Jonathan Gonzalez has a preview of a concert that will benefit victims of the Eaton fire. But first, let's go to Alex Rozier and the LAFD chief's new comments today about lessons learned from the Palisades fire. Alex.
First, I'll tell you, Annabelle, that the chief did not take any questions from journalists today.
No, why is he going to do that? But he did speak fairly candidly at the LAFD Board of Commissioners.
First, I'll tell you, Annabelle, that the chief did not take any questions from journalists today, but he said that there were significant shortcomings in the department's response to both the Palisades and Lochman fires. He says that firefighters are not to blame. He says that it came down to leadership decisions and systems that were in place that led to multiple failures.
The on-the-ground firefighters are not the ones to blame here. It's management. And that doesn't just mean the fire chief that got fired. That means all the battalion chiefs that said, nah, we're good. And whatever other things happened that interfered with the making sure that the Lochman fire was completely out.
1 year after the Lochman and Palisades fires, LAFD Chief Jaime Moore shared this message with the community.
The people of Los Angeles deserve honesty, accountability.
Hey, that rhymes. He should run for mayor.
And a fire department that learns from every incident.
The chief started...
He was probably going to say mistake, and he said, we probably shouldn't say that for liability reasons.
The chief started by talking about the Lochman fire, which investigators say reignited days later and led to the Palisades fire. Chief Moore says at the time, the department thought the Lochman fire was out.
At the time, fire companies were directed to pick up hose. The department genuinely believed the fire was fully extinguished.
despite testimony from parks officials saying it wasn't and video from residents showing that there was still smoldering going on.
That was based on the information, conditions, and procedures in place at that moment. As a result, we've already changed our mop-up procedures, and we've formally incorporated the use of drone technology to enhance post-suppression verification, situational awareness, and detection of residual heat.
Chief Moore says,
now, this is an interesting line that he's dancing, because it is good to admit, okay, what we did obviously wasn't good enough. We have the evidence of that. Here's what we're doing to improve. That is good to know. But here's the thing that I think about. You have that kid in Florida right now awaiting trial for arson and being charged with the entire Palisades Fire. And sure, what he did was awful, and he sounds completely insane. But when you have so much documented evidence now of the failures of not just the LAFD, but also the State Parks Department and so many other structural failures in the city and county of Los Angeles, can you really blame this whole thing, the 6,000 homes that burned down, the lives lost, on that little fire from the first? I don't know how they're going to get a conviction.
Chief Moore says the fires exposed staffing challenges and more issues due to the placement of resources.
And let's not forget, one of the reasons the LAFD is stretched so thin is because so many resources are dedicated towards the homeless that start fires and overdose constantly.
We cannot continue to rely on a system that is stretched thin on its best day and overwhelmed on its worst.
Well, then we're going to need a new mayor and a new city council that approve a budget that actually funds the fire department in a way that they need to be funded. Tracy Park's talking about this. We have about half the amount of stations we should have for a city this massive.
And he acknowledged that the Palisades Fire after action report was edited multiple times to make LAFD's leaders look better.
It is now clear.
This is another massive scandal, but there's so many scandals, nobody has enough attention to look at all of them. And this is why we focus almost 100% on local and state issues here, because that should be damning in itself. Remember, the after action report was the whole reason that Karen Bass said she needed to fire Kristen Crowley, because Kristen Crowley didn't want to do the after action report. Regardless, she gets fired. The after-action report takes months and months and months, and then it finally comes out, and the after-action report pretty much reads as, we shrug our shoulders, there's nothing we could have done, this was just a horrific weather event. And then it turns out, thanks to investigating finally from the LA Times, that, they edited this report several times so management didn't look bad. That's why you can't have a department investigating themselves. Of course, Gavin's supposed to be investigating this, but these reports are taking over a year and a half, and hopefully everyone forgets because nobody looks good in this story.
It is now clear that multiple drafts were edited to soften language and reduce explicit criticism of department leadership in that final report.
And good on Jaime Moore for saying that out loud, because that could put him in jeopardy with not only the top brass that now he's responsible for, but also with the mayor's office, because she's the one that commissioned that report.
This editing occurred prior to my appointment as fire chief, and I can assure you that nothing of this sort will ever again happen while I am fire chief.
Since the fires, the chief says the department's made several improvements, including changes to dispatch and pre-deployment procedure. But the fire union says the biggest issue hasn't been addressed: staffing.
We need more members, more staffing. We need more fire stations, and we need more engines, trucks, tools, and equipment. And that's what's going to make our department successful.
And I don't see that happening anytime soon without a massive change in leadership in the city of Los Angeles. Now, I know that Tracy Park is advocating for a bond measure on the 2026 ballot. That might be a temporary fix. Maybe that will help, but ultimately the focus of our current mayor and the focus of the city council is not on this. Even with as bad as things got, it's still not their focus. We still don't have a fully funded fire department. We still are wasting so much money instead on homelessness and all the other nonsense that we waste money on. Money that goes to nonprofits for things like meth pipes in MacArthur Park. That's where your money goes instead of the absolute basics.
The fire union UFLAG says that LAFD right now has about the same staffing today that they did in the 1960s, talking about 3,400 members.
Whoa. Okay, what was LA's population in the 1960s? Los Angeles population, let's go 1965, right? In the middle of there. The LA city population, I need to put city, not the metro area. The city of Los Angeles had about 2 million in 1960, 2.4 million. Now we're at 4 million. So that's a big difference. That's pretty huge. And we have the same amount of firefighters. That's embarrassing.
They should have about 7,000 in their view. That's why UFLAG is trying to get a ballot on the November election, adding some more funding for the department. But when asked today if the response would be any different if another Palisades fire picked up today, UFLAG's vice president said no. They need more people.
No, they're of course. They're not going to say that. That's what they're going to say. Now, of course, the LAFD is not the only agency that we need to look at when it comes to the Lochman fire. We also need to look at what was going on with the state parks department, because even though the LAFD was putting out that fire, this is on state park land. Well, state parks employees were deposed and those depositions have been released. Here is, once again, NBC4.
Federal investigators believe the Palisades fire may have been caused by another smaller fire that ignited in the same area. The Lochman fire started on January 1st. A 29-year-old man has been arrested and charged with starting that New Year's Day fire. He pleaded not guilty. Prosecutors say the embers from the Lochman fire may not have been completely extinguished, and the smoldering could have caused the Palisades fire.
And again, I put out this question, and maybe we'll open this up to calls. Based on what you know, if you were on that jury, the jury for the 29-year-old who started the Lochman fire, based on what we know now on the failures of the LAFD and the State Parks Department, could you vote to convict this guy of the Palisades fire and not just the Lochman fire that he started? If you want to chime in on that, you can give us a call, 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Yes, that small fire turned into the big fire, but that's because of the failures of our local and state government. And I don't know how you can convict this guy on all the destruction from that small blaze.
Tonight, we're hearing
not absolving him. What he did was awful, but is he truly responsible for all of that?
Tonight, we're hearing directly from state parks employees who were sent to the scene of the Lochman fire. They recently testified about what they say happened after that fire erupted on January 1st. Here's Carolyn Johnson with more.
For the first time, you're seeing parts of the video depositions in the case against the state of California and the city of LA. And we also have just released drone video shot by a homeowner on January 1st that appears to show smoke burning at the southern end of the Lochman burn scar, where the Palisades fire ignited almost a week later.
Yeah, if I'm in that courtroom and you're the defense attorney, that's the first video that you play.
I joined this lawsuit because people that are responsible for public safety need to be held accountable.
It just keeps blowing up and exploding.
And public safety did not happen in the Pacific Palisades.
David Howard and his family lost their home of more than 30 years on January 7th, just 2 hours after he evacuated.
This is the upper part is a separate street.
They're now in the process of rebuilding. What were the failings in your mind with the Lochman fire and how that was dealt with back on January 1st?
I think I would start by saying what went right, which was nothing.
That's an indictment right there.
Just 2 hours after he evacuated.
This is the upper part
dealt with back on January 1st.
I think I would start by saying what went right, which was nothing.
Recent testimony by California State Parks employees only add to his frustration.
Based on your observations when you hiked up and took photos on January 1st, you said you saw evidence of smoldering still occurring. Did that not cause you to think that the park should be closed to members of the public?
I did not believe it was necessary to close the park.
State parks employees testifying in a deposition, they didn't think it was necessary to close the park when they still saw smoldering, and they didn't tell anybody, and they didn't call the LAFD back or call CAL FIRE. Again, my question to you, 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222, is the Lochman fire arsonist truly responsible for the Palisades fire? Or is it the failures of our local and state government that are truly responsible for the Palisades fire? If you were on that jury, could you convict this kid of all the destruction of the Palisades fire, knowing what we know now? 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Get on the line. I'm sure you have an opinion about this, so get on the phone right now. 800-222-5222. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. We're taking your phone calls right now at 800-222-5222. Based on what we know now coming out of the LAFD and the State Parks Department with all the lawsuits, if you were on the jury of the Lochman fire arsonist, could you truly convict him for the destruction of the Palisades fire? Or is the fault of that in our state and local government? Let's start with Howard. Howard, hello.
Hello. Lost my house in the Palisades. No question the state and local government's responsible for the Palisades fire. The idiot who started the fire on the 1st is not the reason our houses were all lost. They didn't put out the fire.
There were so many failures that led to this. I mean, not only with the reservoir, not only with the hydrants, but the fact that there was a fire that they thought was put out, or they said they knew was put out, but so many videos have come up where people saw the smoking.
Correct.
And my father on.
There's really no excuse for the government to fail to be a government that's supposed to protect us, but California excels at that.
We truly do, and we're the voters that put these people in charge. We had a choice between Rick Caruso and Karen Bass, and we chose Karen Bass overwhelmingly. And what was the one structure in the Palisades that didn't burn? It was Rick Caruso's property because he had his own private firefighters because he didn't trust the city of Los Angeles.
Correct. And if he had been our mayor, we at least maybe had a fighting chance of not losing everything.
I think we would have had a lot more attention in the 2 years leading up to this paid to those basics, because he would have been a back to basics. Sure, he's not perfect either, and maybe there still would have been something that happened. But right now, we have elected leaders in government that don't care about the basics. And the basics are keeping the streets clean, police, and fire. That's it. Everything else the local government does is a waste of time and money.
And they love doing the other stuff.
Of course,
really
it's a lot more fun for them. It's a lot more fun to get involved with some nonsensical, cause or some kind of crusade, when really it's the basics that matter when you're a city council and a mayor.
Appreciate you shining a light on this. That's why we tune in. Have a good night.
We're so glad to hear from you. Hopefully things are moving forward. I'm so sorry to hear that you lost your house in this unacceptable fire. Thank you so much for the call. Appreciate it. Let's go to Don in Rancho Palos Verdes. Don, hello.
This is Don. The fireboat number 3 in the LA Harbor can squirt water 700 feet at a 45-degree angle. It means they can go 200 feet. With that kind of range, they put out 32,000 gallons per minute. 32,000 gallons per minute. They could have gone up and down Malibu and saved all those houses. I think they lost about $500 million in homes there. And I talked to the LA fire chief of fireboat number 3, and he says, our charter says we can't leave the LA Harbor. They have 5 other fireboats to cover LA Harbor. They could have quite easily gone up there and squirted. They would have put salt water, but so what if you lose your vegetation? It's not that big a deal compared to losing a house and all the artworks and stuff like that.
Well, and that's the bureaucratic insanity that we have to deal with. Thanks so much for the call, where there are so many people that have to make this decision before something as simple as, okay, we can't fly the planes. Well, we have boats on the harbor. Why don't we get one of those involved? And you showed that you really had nobody in charge. And when the mayor wasn't here, you had so many people trying to act like they were in charge, whether it's the city, whether it's the county. It was a mess, and it's a failure on every single level. So we got the phones open right now. If you're on the jury of this kid in Florida, the one that they believe started the Lochman fire, based on what we know now, could you convict him of the Palisades fire? 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. We'll take more of your calls. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC, and we're going to forget the prelude, get right to the calls, because we got a full bank of them as people want to say what they want to say about this. With everything that we know now about what happened with the LAFD and the edited after action report and the depositions from state parks employees, we've got that kid who is awaiting trial for the Lochman fire, which eventually became the Palisades fire when that wasn't fully put out. Based on everything that we know now, could you convict him of the Palisades fire? Let's start with Roger in Upland. Roger, hello.
Hi there, Randy. I think maybe we need to have a little perspective on things. The United States is perhaps the largest business in the world, and right now it's being run by a businessman. The state of California and the city of Los Angeles are huge businesses, but they're run by people who you wouldn't want to trust to run a hot dog stand. And that's why we have all these problems, and we waste money because nobody's actually paying attention.
Oh, you're totally right about that. And hopefully, after such an eye-opening disaster, when the June primary comes around, now that there are some competitive candidates in the race, we realize that we cannot trust another 4 years to Karen Bass, and let alone her and so many members of the city council that shouldn't be on there, like Eunice Hernandez and Hugo Soto Martinez, these people that do not care about the basics. They care about their nonsensical social justice. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it. Let's go to Scott in Hollywood. Scott, hello.
Hi, Randy. Okay, so to answer your question, I'm a civil lawyer. I'm not a criminal defense lawyer, but maybe a criminal defense lawyer can call in to answer your question more specifically. But in a civil case, if a person injures somebody and say, for example, they need surgery, if something goes wrong in that surgery, there needs to be a do-over, that person that caused the initial injury is on the hook for that too, because, mistakes in the remedy are anticipatable. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the city and the county and the state aren't absolved. They're still responsible for their degree of negligence or maybe even criminal conduct. On the other issue, are you suspecting? I'm kind of suspecting a mutiny, because you've got police chief and the LA and the fire chief both taking positions against Karen Bass. Now, McDonald was recently seen with Bill Asaley at a press conference regarding fraud in Los Angeles. That was pretty ballsy of him.
Well, I think they're at a point where they realize that there's nothing to be afraid of. Karen Bass is in an election year, and if she fires either of them, it's going to be another headache for her. So maybe they don't have to be afraid of serving at her pleasure and worry more about serving their constituents. So you're totally right about that. That could be what's going on here, because there is blood in the water. Even though people have stopped paying attention for a long time and people get distracted because of the anniversary, Spencer Pratt and everything else, people are paying attention to this more than they have in months, and none of it looks good for her.
Well, speaking of Spencer Pratt, you and your audience might want to catch Channel 9 tonight, because as you talked about it on John Phillips' show today, I think Tom Waite at Channel 9 might have to issue a correction and should also issue an apology for disparaging Spencer Pratt for his statement that Spencer Pratt was issuing a false claim about the accounting of the money.
Well, isn't that the weirdest story? Because, and you've been really good at putting that out there on the internet, but isn't it wild that it was Tom Waite who the day before did the story about how we don't really understand the accounting for the Fire Aid concert, and how now Fire Aid says, oh, well, the plan all along was to give the money to the nonprofits. And then to do that fact check in the middle of the Spencer Pratt story, it's like, who put him up to that? That was weird.
Well, I heard your comment that he's generally playing it straight. I don't see that in Tom Waite at all. If you notice, I've been watching that channel for forever. And he came onto the scene maybe, 1 or 2 years ago as the political reporter, whatever. I'm not sure what his qualifications are. But he will never, ever fact-check a Democrat. He only fact-checks Republicans, conservatives. So that's something to keep an eye on. It's what the FCC would call, unfair. What is it? News distortion. So fact-checking only one side and leaving the other side alone. He's never criticized Karen Bass. You know, when she talks about the homeless count being reduced by 1,500 and fails to report that they're deducting cadavers from the homeless population and sticking that number in the homeless reduction. I mean, he doesn't push back. No one does. Figner doesn't on KNX. Not a single person.
Well, of course KNX isn't going to do that. Otherwise, they're not going to get their monthly chats with the mayor.
Or invites to 605 South Irving. You know, I mean, when Gavin Newsom, I didn't hear this speech this morning, but he talked about homeless reduction by 9%? Okay, did he even acknowledge that some of that 9%, maybe all of it, is from overdose deaths? No. Is anybody ever going to ask him? Nobody in mainstream media will. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say. I'll let you get to the other callers.
Well, I appreciate you always, Scott. Thanks so much for calling in. I will say that number, and he very much qualified it with unsheltered homelessness. But yeah, people get so distracted by so many different things, and Gavin put out so many different statements in that presser. Maybe someone will ask him about it, but we have a very short attention span. That's why we try to do what we can to focus on the local. Let's go to Maria in Venice. Maria, hello.
Hey, Randy, listen, that guy that set the Lochman fire, of course he has to be punished for that fire. But, I sort of had a funny feeling that part of all of that was a deflection of blame and to try to bury all the stuff that went wrong. And ironically, if he has a halfway decent good defense attorney, I think that halfway decent good defense attorney is going to highlight exactly what went wrong, such as 2 empty reservoirs, the Santa Ynez Reservoir and the Pacific Palisades Reservoir, dry fire hydrants, no pre-deployment of the fire department, budget cuts for the fire department, plenty of fire trucks in disrepair. So many things went wrong, and are they really going to try and blame that young man for 12 deaths that happened in the big fire? I mean, could that happen? I would sort of be horrified. Yeah, he did the Lochman fire. He has to be punished for that, but for the rest of it, I just don't see it.
Well, and the city and the county and the state have a vested interest in him getting convicted for all that, because that would absolve them of some of the liability. I mean, the city, the county, and the state are facing billions and billions and billions of dollars of liability. You get SoCal Edison for the Eaton fire as well, but the local governments are facing so much liability for all of these failures. And if that conviction does not go through, then they really have nothing else to say in their defense. So that'll be a really interesting thing to watch. Thanks so much for the call, Maria. Appreciate it. Let's go to Tony in Irvine. Tony, hello.
Yes, hello. This is just breaking this down. It's almost obvious why things don't work almost anymore in the government, period. And this is a good example of their priorities. These people that work in the government, the priorities basically are cover your own ass. They're usually inept. They're lazy. It's usually too little, too late. And they're worried about getting paid. So if that's your priorities, you're not working on what needs to be done,
I think you're totally right about that. Thanks so much for the call, Tony. Appreciate it. And it's always something to think about. Has our local and state governments gotten better since term limits? Now that people have to change jobs every 8 years, and nobody who really cares about the city can really be in charge of the city for a very long time. I feel like things were a little better then? Maybe, just maybe. Let's go to Sam in Glendora. Sam, hello.
Hey, hello, Randy. I think that it's not an either or, it's everyone involved. And also, really, it's a question of semantics, calling it two fires. It's one fire that continued to burn. It was never put out. And for anyone to let the guy off the hook because of the ineptitude of a bunch of buffoons that manage the government agencies, it's absurd. He should be punished to the maximum extent of the law, and he'll never be able to pay any of the damages. And so should the government entities. But if you want to make things better, I've been in private business my entire career. If you remove the immunity from the negligence and the stupidity that these politicians and these government employees pull, if they realized that they were on the hook for some of the stupid stuff that they do, maybe they wouldn't be in those positions. You'd actually have people from the private sector going in who actually know how to get stuff done and do things the correct way. If somebody gets hurt with a product that I make, I'm on the hook, not anyone else.
I totally agree with that sentiment. We need to end there's so much talk, we need to end qualified immunity for police officers. No, what we need to do is end qualified immunity for politicians so they can actually be held responsible for sometimes the deadly decisions that they make. That's true at the local, state, and federal level. Thank you so much for the call, Sam. Appreciate it. Let's go to Jonathan in Los Angeles. Jonathan, hello.
Hello. What a great show. Thank you for taking my call. And I believe he's guilty. And I quickly, I've listened to over the last few hours, there was some talk about spraying salt water, onto the fire. And I think it would be pretty hard to spray water into 70, 80 mile an hour wind. That's just one of the things I thought. But yes, I believe this gentleman is guilty. But I also believe that the fire department is guilty. And to just raise one story, there was this guy, we all know him, Larry Silverstein. He was the World Trade Center owner, and he had coverage on the buildings, right? So when he went to cash in his coverage, he argued that he needed to get paid twice, once per building, not just one time for, the whole property. And so it went to court, and the judge said, that's right, he's got to get paid once per building. So they paid him twice, essentially, one payment for each building. And it's the same way on this. Render Neck is guilty. The fire never got put out. That's still Render Neck's fire. It's not the LA Fire Department did not start the fire, right? But it seems like there's negligence. So it seems to me that all the homeowners, everybody that lost property, would be able to sue the city to get some money out of the city. I don't know how anybody's going to get money out of Render Neck. And I'm going to go.
There's no money coming out of that kid, that's for sure. Thanks so much for the call, Jonathan. Appreciate it. We're late for a break. If you're on hold, stay there. We'll get to more of your calls next. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. Let's go to Chaka in San Jose. Chaka, hello.
Hey, Randy, I wanted to comment about news coverage of the event yesterday, the 1 year anniversary of the fires, starting of the fires. They didn't cover it at all, and so it's not even it wasn't even like national news. And only reason I was really in tune to it was because I listened to your day show and the limited coverage that you guys did, or the coverage that you had yesterday, and. Yeah, it was wild. The only thing they had on the KCBS radio station was they covered a memorial, and it was like a moment of silence. That was it. But they didn't cover anything else for the scope of the largest fire, or the fact that this fire is the biggest fire, the loss of property and value of the dollar amount it's going to take to replace everything. They didn't cover it at all on up here, and I mean I'm sure they didn't do anything in. Across the U.S. This is California, though. I should at least heard something about it. What do you think about that?
Oh, you would think so, but you're totally right. Attention spans in California gets ignored in national politics and national news, even when it's the most destructive, costly wildfire in our history. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it. If you're on hold, stay there. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. I got about 30 seconds for each call. Let's go to Mark in San Diego. Mark, you got 30 seconds. Go.
Yeah, the arsonist shall not have an expectation that someone can put out the fire before there is harm for physical or property or even death. There's a criminal case that has to go through. Everything else is a civil case. If the jury that they get is not intelligent enough to see that, we have a problem because it'll set a terrible precedent.
That's a really good point. Hey, right on 30 seconds. Thanks so much for the call. Vera, you got 30 seconds. Vera, hello.
Hi. The young man should not be tried for everything. He should go to a mental institution, how long it takes to get him out. I can't wait for your report tomorrow, but it just shows he's a forerunner. He's shown us how incompetent our people that we're putting in charge of our lives. They are.
You're totally right about that. Thanks so much for the call, Vera. Appreciate it. Can't wait to tell you about Europe tomorrow. Before I get out of here, I do got to give a shout out to my friends at the Pantages Theater and Broadway in Hollywood. Last night, I was invited to the premiere of The Notebook, a love story for the ages. It's playing now through the 25th at the Pantages Theater in Hollywood. And my wife and I might have been the only people in that theater that had never seen the movie or read the book. So I didn't really know what I was going into. I thought, oh, it's a rom-com. It's a romance for sure. It is a very beautiful love story, but also a very tragic story, and it can be a little triggering. There were people that were just in tears watching this thing, especially because it has so much to do with Alzheimer's. But the performances were beautiful, especially the way that they have, 3 different sets of actors all playing the same 2 characters at different ages. And it was a beautiful performance. It is a show unlike anything I've ever seen at the Pantages. So if you are a fan of The Notebook, you should check this out. It's playing at the Pantages through the 25th. And by the way, did you know that the Pantages Theater now, if you get a drink at the bar, they put it in a little sippy cup and you can bring it into the theater? That's new. So we had some tequila sodas, and that made it just a little more fun. They got a great season coming up as well. Book of Mormon in February. 6 is coming back. Beetlejuice, I've never seen that. Spamalot in March. Tina Turner and the Michael Jackson musicals are happening in May. The Sound of Music. Phantom of the Opera. Hell's Kitchen. Beauty and the Beast coming out in the summertime. It's going to be a great season for the Pantages, and it is always one of my favorite places in all of LA. So check out tickets. There's a lot of great shows coming out this year. BroadwayandHollywood.com. That's BroadwayandHollywood.com. I can't wait for Book of Mormon. Even though my wife and I have seen it like 7 or 8 times, we will see it 7 or 8 more times. We love that show. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC.